A crowned king dissolves in a pool beside a white queen, while a green lion devours the sun. These are not scenes from a forgotten fairy tale. They are pages from a secret scientific language. For centuries, alchemists filled manuscripts with breathtaking yet bewildering images, hiding their most profound discoveries in plain sight. This is the hidden world of alchemical symbolism. By the end of this journey, you will hold the key to decode these cryptic drawings yourself, seeing beyond the strange beasts and colorful kings to the real messages about the nature of reality and the human soul. What were these practitioners so desperate to conceal, and what timeless truths did they encode within their art? What does a picture of a dragon fighting an eagle have to do with your own search for meaning? To understand these cryptic images, we must first look past the cliché of a greedy fool trying to make gold. Alchemy was far more than primitive chemistry. It was a complete worldview, a unified system for understanding everything from the structure of matter to the journey of the human spirit. Think of it as a grand tree with 3 deeply interconnected branches. The first branch was the practical, the hands-on work in the laboratory. Alchemists were master experimentalists, carefully heating, distilling, and combining substances, meticulously observing the colors and transformations in their flasks. This was the tangible, physical work with metals, minerals, and acids. But this outward work was always mirrored by a second, inward branch, the spiritual. Every process in the flask was seen as a parallel process within the alchemist's own soul. Purifying a metal symbolized purifying the self from base desires. Creating a noble substance like gold represented achieving a state of spiritual perfection or enlightenment. The third branch was the cosmological, the study of the hidden principles that govern the universe itself. Alchemists believed the same fundamental laws that caused a seed to grow into a tree, or ore to form deep within the earth, were also at work in their flasks and within their own hearts. This is where the drawings become essential. They are the visual language that binds these 3 branches into one coherent whole. A single, strange illustration could simultaneously be a coded recipe for a chemical procedure, a map for a meditative journey of self-discovery, and a diagram of cosmic principles. It was an instructional manual, a spiritual guide, and an encrypted record of secret knowledge, all rolled into one mesmerizing image. The dragon isn't just a monster, it represents the chaotic, raw material of both the world and the self, waiting to be tamed and transformed. This need for secrecy was not just philosophical, it was a matter of survival. Throughout much of its history, alchemy operated in a dangerous twilight. The Church often viewed its practitioners with deep suspicion, seeing their work as heretical meddling with God's creation or even as a form of forbidden magic. Secular authorities, meanwhile, feared the economic and political disruption that might come from someone actually mastering the secret of transmutation. To protect themselves and their art, alchemists became masters of concealment. They wrote in codes, used false names, and buried their most potent insights within layers of allegory. This is where the power of the picture truly shines. A written treatise in Latin could be confiscated, translated, and used as evidence, but a drawing of a winged serpent coiled around a tree, that could be dismissed as mere fantasy, a curious illustration in a book of natural history. The image became a perfect container for hidden knowledge, visible to all but understandable only to those who held the key. Furthermore, these symbols created a universal language that transcended the borders of nations and the limitations of literacy. An alchemist in Germany and one in Persia, speaking completely different languages, could look at the same image of the sun and moon embracing and instantly recognize the core concept of the sacred marriage of masculine and feminine principles. The symbol spoke directly to the intuitive mind, bypassing the need for a shared vocabulary. Within this visual lexicon, several key ideas repeat like a haunting melody. First is the union of opposites, often shown as a king and queen, a sun and moon, or a red lion and white eagle coming together. This wasn't about conflict, but about reconciliation, the merging of contrasting forces to create something entirely new and more perfect. Second are the stages of transformation, the step-by-step journey from base matter to enlightened spirit. This is frequently depicted through a sequence of colors like the famous blackening, whitening, yellowing, and reddening, each color marking a profound inner and outer change. And underpinning it all is the principle of correspondence, the idea that the macrocosm of the universe and the microcosm of the human being are mirrors of one another. A process observed in the stars or in a chemical reaction must, by this law, have its parallel within the human soul. So when you see an alchemical drawing of a dragon fighting an eagle in a starry sky, you are not just looking at a mythical battle. You are looking at a coded map of a universal struggle between chaos and order, a chemical recipe involving volatile and fixed substances, and a guide for the internal battle between our lower and higher natures. The image holds all these meanings at once, waiting for the viewer to learn how to see. These universal principles find their most basic expression in four timeless symbols. At the very foundation of every alchemical drawing lie the four classical elements: earth, air, fire, and water. They are far more than just substances. They are the fundamental states of being, the primary colors on the alchemist's palette from which all of reality is painted. In the artwork, you can spot them immediately. Earth is represented by mountains, caves, or the solid ground itself, the realm of stability and tangible form. Air is shown as the sky, clouds, or often through birds in flight, symbolizing thought, communication, and the invisible breath of life. Fire is depicted as flames, the sun, or through mythical creatures believed to be born from it, like the salamander or the dragon, representing transformative energy, will, and purifying passion. Water appears as streams, oceans, rain, or the reflective surface of a pool, embodying emotion, intuition, and the fluid realm of the soul. But their true power lies not in their individual portraits, but in their dynamic relationships. Each element holds a profound symbolic meaning that maps directly onto the human experience. Earth corresponds to the body and the material world, everything solid and felt. Air aligns with the intellect and the rational mind, the realm of ideas and logic. Fire is the spirit, the driving force of will, inspiration, and purifying change. Water is the emotional and subconscious soul, the deep well of feeling and intuition. The entire alchemical process, both in the flask and within the self, revolves around bringing these four into a state of perfect balance and interaction. This is captured in the famous Latin motto, solve et coagula, dissolve and coagulate. To transform something, you must first break it down to its essence. You must dissolve the old, rigid structures. This is often the work of water and fire, emotion and spirit, washing away and burning up what is no longer needed. Then you must reconstitute it into a new, higher form. You must coagulate. This is the work of earth and air, taking the refined essence and giving it new, solid shape informed by wisdom. So when you see an alchemical illustration showing a stream flowing from a mountain into a fiery pool, you are witnessing a recipe for inner transformation. The mountain, earth, represents your current solid reality. The flowing water is the emotional release that begins to soften and dissolve it. The fiery pool is the passionate, spiritual trial that purifies what remains. And from that crucible, a new, more balanced self can coalesce, integrating the clarity of air with the renewed stability of earth. The elements are never static, they are always in a sacred dance, and learning to read their interactions is the first step to unlocking the deeper story every image tells. Beyond the dance of the four elements lies a secret, a hidden fifth force. Alchemists called it the quintessence or the ether. This was not another piece of the puzzle, but the very glue that held the puzzle together, the luminous spirit that permeated and animated all of creation. While earth, air, fire, and water made up the physical world, the quintessence was the divine spark within it, the breath of life in a living being, the hidden order within chaos, the silent music of the spheres. The entire aim of the alchemical quest, known as the Great Work, was to isolate, purify, and ultimately unite with this quintessence. And the ultimate symbol of this achievement was the most famous and misunderstood of all alchemical icons, the Philosopher's Stone. Forget the idea of a simple red rock that turns lead into gold. That was merely the outer, physical shadow of a far greater inner reality. The true Philosopher's Stone was a symbol of absolute perfection, enlightenment, and immortality. It represented the final, stable product of the transformative process, whether that process occurred in a laboratory flask or within the human soul. It was the point where all opposites were reconciled, where base matter became spiritualized, and where the seeker achieved a state of unshakable wisdom and unity with the cosmos. Its symbols in the drawings are radiant clues to its nature. You might see it depicted as a glowing cube, symbolizing perfection and stability, the foundation of a new reality. It appears as a king wearing a crown of stars, representing sovereign consciousness ruling over the inner kingdom. Most powerfully, it is shown as the phoenix, the mythical bird that burns itself to ashes only to rise again, more glorious than before. This is the ultimate alchemical metaphor, the necessity of the old self dying completely so that the new, enlightened self can be born. This reveals the stone's beautiful and essential dual nature. It was simultaneously described as an external elixir, a tangible substance with miraculous properties, and an internal state of being, a permanent transformation of the alchemist's own spirit. The physical stone, if it could be created, was believed to heal illness, prolong life, and perfect metals. But the spiritual stone was the real prize, the achievement of a purified mind, a heart free from conflict, and a direct experience of the divine essence within. The laboratory work was the map, but the territory was the soul. So when you encounter an image of an alchemist holding a radiant gem that illuminates a dark cave, you are seeing both a literal hope and a profound metaphor. The gem is the concentrated quintessence, the light of consciousness that dispels inner darkness. The cave is the secluded laboratory of the self. The message is clear: the ultimate treasure is not found in a distant mine, but forged in the fires of one's own experience. The stone is not something you find, it is something you become. Yet within the crucible of transformation, the four elements themselves are guided by three even more mysterious principles. To the alchemist, everything in creation, from a lump of lead to a human thought, is composed of a dynamic interplay between sulfur, mercury, and salt. These are not the ordinary substances you find on a shelf, but the philosophical essences behind all matter and spirit. Think of them as the fundamental software running on the hardware of earth, air, fire, and water. The first principle is sulfur. It represents the soul, the fiery spark of individuality and desire. It is masculine, fixed, and combustible, the force that gives something its unique character and drives it to act. In the drawings, you will recognize sulfur as the proud red lion or as the brilliant, life-giving sun. It is the will to exist, the passion that animates us. The second is mercury, the spirit. This is not the toxic metal, but the principle of intelligence, adaptability, and connection. It is feminine, volatile, and fluid, the medium through which transformation flows. Its symbols are the cunning serpent, the reflective moon, or the enigmatic hermaphrodite, a being that unites both genders. Mercury is the mind, the messenger that can travel between realms, the intuitive understanding that dissolves boundaries. The third is salt, the body. It is the principle of solidity, crystallization, and tangible form. Salt is the great mediator, the vessel that contains and gives shape to the volatile dance of sulfur and mercury. You see it as a stable cube, as the earth itself, or as the white, crystalline residue left after a purification. Salt is our physical vessel, the necessary ground for experience. The entire alchemical process is the story of these three. In their raw, natural state, they are separate and impure. Base metal, or a troubled human being, is seen as a state where chaotic sulfur, flighty mercury, and coarse salt are at odds. The work involves purifying each one and then uniting them in a perfect, inseparable marriage. When the red lion of sulfur and the silver serpent of mercury are reconciled within the stable container of salt, something miraculous is born. This sacred union is the birth of the Philosopher's Stone. On a material level, this symbolized the creation of a perfected, incorruptible substance. But on the human level, it maps perfectly onto the ancient quest for wholeness, the integration of mind, body, and spirit. The fiery soul, sulfur, finds its purpose. The fluid spirit, mercury, finds its focus, and the solid body, salt, becomes their holy temple. An image of a king and queen dissolving in a bath, their essences merging and then crystallizing into a single radiant gem, is not just a chemical allegory. It is a portrait of inner unity where our passions, our thoughts, and our physical being finally work in harmonious concert, creating a state of being that is, in every sense, golden. The fiery union of sulfur and mercury leads to a profound and necessary darkness. This is the first and most crucial stage of the great work, known as Negrido, the blackening. In the drawings, it is a stark and unsettling scene. You might see a black crow pecking at a skull, a corpse rotting in a tomb, or an entire landscape plunged into an Inkai night. This is not a symbol of failure, but of essential beginnings. Negrido represents putrefaction, the deliberate dissolution of the old self. It is the moment when all your comfortable assumptions, your ingrained habits, and your false identities are broken down. Psychologically, this is the dark night of the soul, a period of depression, confusion, or profound crisis where everything you thought you knew turns to ash. In the laboratory, it was often the black, charred mass left after intense heating, the prima materia reduced to its chaotic, primal state. The crow is a perfect symbol for this, a scavenger that cleans away the dead to make room for new life. You must be willing to let the old version of you die, to sit with that blackness and not run from it, for it is from this fertile void that true transformation can begin. From that absolute darkness emerges a gentle, radiant light. The second stage is albedo, the whitening. After the chaos of putrefaction comes purification. The black mass is washed, distilled, and rises as a pure, white substance. Visually, the grim crow gives way to a graceful white swan or a luminous queen clothed in brilliant white. This is the stage of illumination, clarity, and cleansing. All the impurities burned away in the Negrido are now washed clean. Psychologically, this is the dawn after the long night. The confusion lifts and a new, serene understanding begins to crystallize. It is a state of refined thought, purified emotion, and spiritual awakening. The mind becomes like a clear, still pool reflecting the moon, free from the muddy turmoil of the previous stage. The White Queen represents this sovereign, purified consciousness, now in charge of the inner kingdom. But the work is not yet done, for this white state, while beautiful, is still somewhat passive and lunar. It is silver, not yet gold. The purified white substance must now be imbued with the active power of the sun. This is Citronitas, the yellowing, a stage sometimes called the solar awakening. The symbols shift from lunar coolness to solar fire. The white swan may transform into a golden lion, or a radiant sun rises over the landscape. This is where the purified spirit, having been cleansed in the albedo, is energized and given purpose. It is the dawning of wisdom, the application of that clear understanding to the world. If albedo was about receiving light, Citronitas is about generating it from within. Psychologically, this is the integration of your insights, where you begin to act from your new, purified center with confidence and vitality. The golden lion is your awakened will, no longer the chaotic red lion of raw desire, but a noble, focused power guided by clarity. It is the moment your inner transformation starts to manifest outwardly, glowing with a steady, intellectual and spiritual light. That golden light must finally deepen into the color of life, passion, and completion. The ultimate stage is rubedo, the reddening. This is the climax of the great work. The golden lion is crowned, or the white queen and red king are united in a final, sacred marriage. The most powerful symbol is the phoenix, its wings crimson with flame, rising triumphantly from its own ashes. Rubedo represents the final fixation, the creation of the philosopher's stone itself. It is the full integration of all that came before, the body, soul, and spirit united into an indestructible whole. The color red signifies perfected love, total vitality, and the fully actualized self. Psychologically, this is not a state of constant ecstasy, but of unshakable wholeness. The conflicts are resolved, the opposites are married, and you operate from a place of complete, embodied authenticity. You have died to the old self in the blackness, been cleansed in the white light, awakened in the golden sun, and reborn in the red fire. The sequence of colors is a map for the most profound journey any human can undertake, the path from fragmentation to a fully realized and radiant being. The radiant phoenix, reborn from its own ashes, is just one member of a vast and symbolic menagerie. Alchemical drawings are populated by a host of creatures, each a keyholder to a specific stage of the great transformation. To walk through these pages is to enter a living emblem book where every beast has a secret to tell. Perhaps the most ancient and universal of all is the Ouroboros, the serpent devouring its own tail. This perfect, unbroken circle is a breathtakingly simple image for an infinitely profound idea. It is the cycle of time itself, where endings are merely new beginnings. In the flask, it represents the cyclical nature of the work, the constant process of dissolution and coagulation, death and rebirth. For the alchemist, it symbolized the unity of all things, the cosmos contained within a single, self-sustaining being. The tail in the mouth shows that the creative force and the destructive force are one and the same, that the energy which consumes also regenerates. It whispers that you are both the devourer and the devoured in your own life, perpetually recreating yourself. Then there is the dragon, a creature of immense power and profound duality. Unlike the orderly Ouroboros, the dragon often represents the raw, untamed prima materia, the chaotic first matter from which all creation springs. It is the fiery, volatile spirit that must be confronted, subdued, and ultimately harnessed. In many illustrations, a knight or a saint battles this beast, a clear metaphor for the alchemist's struggle to master the wild, unconscious forces within themselves and in nature. To slay the dragon is not to destroy this primal energy, but to tame it, to redirect its formidable power from chaos toward the service of the great work. This stands in stark contrast to the glorious phoenix, where the dragon is the untamed beginning, the phoenix is the perfected end. Its story is the entire alchemical process in a single mythic event. It willingly enters the fire of its own funeral pyre, representing the essential stage of nigredo, the blackening and utter dissolution of the old self. From those ashes it rises anew, more vibrant and radiant than before, embodying the final rubedo. The phoenix does not merely survive the fire, it is defined by it. It is the ultimate symbol of triumphant resurrection, proving that true strength is forged in surrender, and that our most brilliant selves are born from the ashes of what we let go. Another poignant avian symbol is the pelican. In medieval legend, this bird was believed to pierce its own breast to feed its starving young with its blood. Alchemists adopted this as a perfect emblem for the process of distillation. In their vessels, a substance would be heated, vaporize, rise into the cooler upper part of the apparatus, condense, and then drip back down to nourish the material below, enriching it through repeated circulation. The pelican feeding its young from its own heart thus became a moving symbol of self-sacrifice and inner nourishment. It speaks to the necessity of giving of your own essence, of repeatedly refining your thoughts and energies so that a higher part of you may be sustained and grow. This pelican vessel was not just a piece of glassware, it was a model for the soul, a reminder that growth requires a cyclical offering of what you already possess, distilled into a purer form to feed your own awakening. But the most regal figures in this symbolic kingdom are the lion and the eagle, locked in an eternal, instructive struggle. The lion appears in two distinct and powerful forms. First is the green lion, a truly startling image. You will see it depicted as a ferocious beast, often in the act of devouring the sun itself. This vivid green creature does not represent a living animal, but a potent chemical substance, usually a highly corrosive acid or metallic compound. It is raw, untamed nature, the primal matter in its most aggressive and dissolving state. To devour the sun means to break down and consume even the most radiant and fixed principles, reducing them back to their essential, chaotic beginnings. It is the embodiment of the initial, violent dissolution required for any transformation to start. Yet from this chaotic beginning emerges its perfected counterpart, the red lion. This is the lion in its majestic, solar glory. It no longer devours the sun, it has become the sun. The red lion symbolizes the fully matured philosopher's stone, the achieved state of fiery, sovereign perfection. It is the will purified and empowered, the passion transformed into unwavering purpose. Where the green lion tears down, the red lion stands as the unshakable ruler of the new kingdom built from those ruins. Its battle is with the eagle, the master of the air. The eagle represents the principle of sublimation, the process where a solid transforms directly into a vapor, ascending without passing through a liquid stage. Symbolically, this is the ascent of the spirit, the flight of consciousness away from the heavy, material world toward the realm of pure intellect and vision. In countless drawings, the eagle and the lion are shown in fierce combat. This is not a fight to the death, but a dynamic, necessary opposition. The lion is fixed, solar, and earthly. The eagle is volatile, lunar, and aerial. Their struggle depicts the central tension in the work, the conflict between the fixed and the volatile, between the desire for solid form and the urge for spiritual release. The great work requires both the earthy stability of the lion and the airy freedom of the eagle to be reconciled. Then there is the more elusive but equally vital unicorn. With its single, spiraled horn, it is the emblem of ultimate purity and penetrating truth. In alchemy, it is deeply associated with the mercurial spirit, that fluid, intelligent principle. Its horn was said to have the power to purify poisoned waters, which alchemists saw as a perfect metaphor for their work, cleansing the impure soul. The unicorn is often shown with a virgin maiden in a walled garden, a scene representing the protected, pristine state of the prima materia before the work begins. It signifies the untouched potential, the pure spirit that must be carefully captured and guided through the transformative process. Together, these royal beasts map the entire journey, from the corrosive green beginning, through the battle between earth and air, to the capture of a pristine spirit, all culminating in the radiant red sovereignty of the completed self. The struggle of beasts gives way to a more intimate drama, the sacred marriage of human forms. At the heart of countless alchemical manuscripts stand two majestic figures, the Red King and the White Queen. They are the human face of the cosmic principles we've explored. The king, robed in crimson and often crowned with the sun, is the embodiment of sulfur, the fixed, fiery soul, and the active solar principle. He represents consciousness, will, and the driving force of transformation. Opposite him stands the White Queen, clothed in silver and lunar white, crowned with the moon. She is Mercury, the volatile, receptive spirit, and the passive lunar principle. She represents the subconscious, intuition, and the fluid medium through which change flows. They are not rivals but destined partners. Their entire story builds toward one pivotal event, the chemical wedding. This is the central allegory of alchemy, a lavish, symbolic ceremony where the king and queen are united in a sacred bond. In the drawings, you might see them standing hand in hand before an altar, or more mysteriously, dissolving together in a shared bath, their distinct bodies merging into a single new substance. This marriage is the reconciliation of all opposites, not just male and female, but also spirit and matter, fire and water, heaven and earth. It is the moment the volatile is fixed and the fixed is made volatile, creating a perfect dynamic equilibrium. From this mystical union is born their ultimate child, the most striking of all alchemical human forms, the Rebis. The word itself means double thing. Visually, the Rebis is a single, majestic figure with two heads, one crowned as a king and the other as a queen, often sharing a single, winged, androgynous body. In its hands it may hold the sun and the moon, or a sword and a chalice. This is not a monster, but a symbol of perfected, balanced wholeness. The Rebis is the philosopher's stone in human form, the living embodiment of the alchemist's goal. It represents the state where all inner conflict has ceased, where the masculine and feminine aspects of the psyche are fully integrated and cooperating. It is the consciousness that has married its own subconscious, the will that flows seamlessly with intuition. To achieve the Rebis is to become a complete human being, a self-contained universe. But this profound inner work was never seen as a solitary endeavor. The alchemists believed they operated under divine sanction and guidance. This is why figures of God, angels, and ancient sages frequently oversee or inhabit the margins of these symbolic landscapes. Depictions of God, often as an old man with a compass or a triangle, represent the divine geometric order underlying all of creation, the ultimate source of the laws the alchemists sought to understand. Angels act as messengers and intermediaries, sometimes shown pouring divine influence from heaven into the alchemist's flask, symbolizing the grace or inspiration necessary for the work to succeed. Most important among the guiding sages is Hermes Trismegistus, the legendary, thrice great Hermes. He was a fusion of the Greek god Hermes, the messenger, and the Egyptian god Thoth, the scribe of the gods. Hermes Trismegistus was considered the father of alchemy, the source of its deepest wisdom. His presence in a manuscript, often as a wise, bearded elder holding an emerald tablet, is a stamp of authority. It connects the practitioner's work to an ancient, divine revelation. He represents the transmission of secret knowledge from a higher source, a reminder that the art was not invented but discovered, a truth whispered down through the ages. So the journey mapped in these drawings moves from the separation of the royal couple, through the trials of their courtship and purification, to their ecstatic union, resulting in the birth of a new, divine self, all witnessed and guided by the wisdom of the ages. It is a map for becoming your own Rebis, a being of reconciled opposites standing whole under your own double crown. Above the royal marriage and the battling beasts, a silent clockwork governs the entire process. The alchemist's laboratory was a mirror of the heavens, and the most powerful symbols of all were the celestial bodies themselves. The sun and moon were not just distant lights, they were the cosmic embodiments of the two great forces that had to be united. The sun, in its radiant, unwavering brilliance, was far more than a star. It was the perfect symbol for gold, not just the metal, but the state of incorruptible perfection. It represented the active, masculine principle, the light of conscious awareness, and the fiery soul of the sulfur principle. In the drawings, you see it as a golden disk, often with a face, shining down upon the scene, bestowing its vital, animating force. It is the father, the king, the unwavering will. Its counterpart, the moon, is its perfect complement. With its cool, reflective light and ever-changing phases, the moon symbolized silver, the receptive feminine principle, the deep waters of the subconscious, and the fluid intelligence of the Mercury principle. It is the mother, the queen, the intuitive mind that reflects and adapts. The alchemist's entire work hinged on bringing these two into perfect alignment, a moment called the conjunction. This is why you so often see the sun and moon positioned on either side of a central figure, or even merged into a single, two-colored sphere. Their marriage in the sky mirrored the chemical wedding in the flask, the sacred union of fixed and volatile, of knowing and being. But the cosmos held more than just these two luminaries. Scattered across the Inkai backgrounds of these manuscripts, you'll find stars, and they carry a potent, concentrated meaning. A single star, especially a multi-pointed one, often represents the divine spark, the seed of the philosopher's stone itself. It is that initial, infinitesimal point of perfect potential from which the entire new creation will grow. It is the quintessence captured, a fragment of celestial fire fallen to earth, waiting to be nurtured. This idea of celestial influence was not metaphorical poetry, it was practical science to the alchemist. They operated on a principle of profound correspondence, where every planet ruled over a specific metal in the earth. The sun, of course, ruled gold. The moon ruled silver, Mars, the red, warlike planet, ruled iron, Venus, the beautiful morning star, ruled copper, Mercury, the swift messenger, ruled the quicksilver metal that bore its name. Saturn, the slow, cold outer planet, ruled lead. This created a living, breathing connection between the macrocosm of the heavens and the microcosm of the alchemist's workbench. The goal was never merely to manipulate dead matter. It was to create a vessel, a process, and a moment perfectly aligned to capture the specific influence of a celestial body and fix it into physical form. To make gold was to capture the sun's essence in metal. To achieve the white stage of albedo was to bring the moon's purifying silver light down into the substance. The laboratory itself became a kind of observatory and temple, where the timing of operations might be planned according to planetary hours or specific phases of the moon. The flask was a tiny, sealed universe where the drama of the stars could be played out in miniature, accelerating nature's own slow work. So when you look at an alchemical drawing of a star descending into a sealed vessel where a king and queen embrace, you are seeing a complete cosmological recipe. It is an instruction to unify the solar and lunar principles within a protected space at the correct cosmic moment, to invite and trap that stellar seed of spirit, thereby giving birth to a new, heavenly reality within the earthly realm. The alchemist aimed not just to understand the stars, but to invite them inside. This celestial clockwork required a sacred space on earth, a sealed universe built not of stars but of brick and glass. The alchemist's laboratory was far more than a workshop. It was a physical model of the cosmos, and its central tools were profound symbols in their own right. First among these was the Aether, the great furnace. Its name comes from the Arabic for fire, but it was not a roaring blaze. Often depicted as a sturdy, tower-like structure, the Aether was designed to provide a sustained, gentle, and perfectly controlled heat for months or even years. This was not about violent destruction, but about patient incubation. The tower itself is a powerful symbol representing the spinal column or the axis mundi, the central pillar connecting heaven and earth. The gentle, constant fire within is the unwavering focus and spiritual will of the alchemist, the inner flame that must be maintained without faltering throughout the long, dark nights of the work. It is the steady heartbeat of the entire operation. Within this tower of fire sat the most sacred object of all, the Hermetic vessel. This was the sealed flask, often egg-shaped, where the miraculous transformations were meant to occur. Its name comes from Hermes, the guardian of secrets, and its seal was absolute. Nothing could enter, nothing could escape. This vessel represented the protected, self-contained universe, the microcosm where the drama of the sun and moon would play out. But it was also a direct metaphor for the alchemist's own mind and body. Just as the flask must be perfectly sealed to hold the volatile spirits, the practitioner had to seal themselves off from worldly distractions and negative influences. The mind became a closed vessel where thoughts could circulate, purify, and combine without interference. The body was the container for the soul's own transformation. Then there is the poignant and beautifully designed pelican vessel. Named for the legendary bird, its design features two tubes that arch from its top and curve back down to re-enter its body. During distillation, the substance would vaporize, travel up these tubes, condense, and drip back down into the main chamber. This process of continuous reflux of a substance nourishing itself with its own purified essence was the perfect laboratory analogy for the pelican's myth. In the drawings, you often see this vessel with the pelican piercing its own breast, a moving reminder that the work required a cyclical offering of the self. Spiritually, it symbolized the inner circulatory process where insights and energies are continually distilled and fed back into the core of one's being, leading to gradual but profound enrichment. The apparatus was never just functional, it was instructional. The shape of the vessel, the quality of the fire, the integrity of the seal, each element was a constant physical reminder of the inner state required for success. A cracked vessel meant a distracted mind. An erratic fire symbolized a wavering will. The laboratory was an external map for an internal journey. Every tool a silent teacher pointing the practitioner back toward the disciplined, patient, and sealed work happening within their own soul. Even within the sealed glass of the Hermetic vessel, life finds a way to bloom. The alchemist's symbolic garden is not one of simple beauty, but of profound, living process, where the most potent symbols are not forged in fire but grow from the earth. Towering above them all is the magnificent philosophical tree. This is no ordinary oak or elm. Its roots dig deep into the dark earth of prima materia. Its trunk is the steady, ascending work of the alchemist, and its branches reach toward the heavens, bearing the most impossible fruit. You will see it illustrated with suns, moons, and stars hanging from its boughs like glowing apples. Each piece of celestial fruit represents a stage of the work achieved and made permanent. A moon fruit signifies the purified, white stage of albedo. A sun fruit is the awakened golden light of citronitas. A star fruit is the ultimate prize, the quintessence itself crystallized and harvested. The tree's growth mirrors the entire transformative journey, from a single seed of intention planted in the black soil of Negrido, through the slow, patient development of trunk and branch, finally culminating in the radiant fruition of Rubido. It teaches that enlightenment is not a sudden strike of lightning, but an organic, inevitable flowering of sustained effort. Far stranger things grow in the shadows beneath this tree. The mandrake root, with its uncanny, human-like shape, was believed to shriek when pulled from the ground. For the alchemist, this eerie plant bridged the mineral, vegetable, and human kingdoms. Its form suggested a being halfway between a root and a person, making it a powerful symbol for one of alchemy's most controversial goals, the creation of the homunculus, a tiny, artificial human thought to be grown in a flask. The mandrake represented the idea that life, even intelligent life, could be coaxed from the earth through art, a literal embodiment of the alchemist's power to act as a co-creator with nature. Its shriek was the sound of the primal materia protesting as it was shaped into a new, conscious form. But for every strange root, there is a flower of breathtaking clarity. The rose holds a place of special reverence, particularly within the mysterious Rosicrucian traditions. Its multi-layered, spiraling bloom is a perfect map for the gradual, petal-by-petal unfolding of spiritual revelation. A rosebud is a closed secret, and its full bloom is that secret revealed in all its splendor. This connects to the ancient phrase sub rosa, meaning under the rose, a symbol of confidentiality. In many old banquet halls, a rose was carved on the ceiling above the table, signaling that anything said there was to remain a secret. For the alchemist, the work itself was a sub rosa endeavor, its deepest truths only shared with those who had earned the trust to see the flower open. The rose's beauty, emerging from a thorny stem, also perfectly captures the alchemical truth that supreme value is born from difficulty and sacrifice. Alongside it often grows the lily, a symbol of radiant, unstained purity. Its brilliant white petals make it a natural emblem for the albedo stage, that state of washed clean clarity and lunar illumination. Where the rose is complex and secretive, the lily is simple and open, representing the innocence and pristine receptivity required after the dark putrefaction of the beginning. Together, the rose and the lily often flank symbolic scenes, representing the complementary paths of passionate, mysterious pursuit and serene, purified being. To walk through this garden is to understand that alchemy saw transformation not as a mechanical process, but as a living one. The goal was not to build a machine, but to cultivate a soul, to nurture a seed of potential until it bore celestial fruit. The next time you see a medieval drawing of a tree with a staff or an apple, remember, you are not looking at a fantasy. You are reading a gardener's manual for the human spirit. Geometry is the silent architecture of the alchemical world. Beneath the vibrant beasts and royal figures lies a foundational language of pure form, where circles, triangles, and squares hold the keys to the universe's deepest structure. These are not idle decorations, but the essential blueprints for creation itself. The most fundamental of these is the circle. With no beginning and no end, it is the perfect symbol for eternity, the infinite spirit, and the cyclical nature of all things. In the drawings, you see it as the sun, the moon, the Ouroboros serpent, and the Hermetic vessel itself. The circle represents the quintessence, the divine spark that exists outside of time. It is the goal, the state of wholeness and perfection the alchemist seeks to attain. But the circle also maps the process, the endless wheel of solve et coagula, dissolve and coagulate, where each ending feeds a new beginning. It is the promise that transformation is not a linear path to a finish line, but an eternal return to a higher state. From this perfect unity emerges the principle of division and relationship, the triangle. This shape is dynamic, pointing with intention. A triangle with its apex pointing upward is a tongue of flame, a symbol of fire, aspiration, and the masculine principle. It reaches from the material world toward the spiritual heavens. Invert it with the point facing down, and it becomes a vessel, a cup, representing water, receptivity, and the feminine principle. It draws spiritual influence down into material form. But the triangle's most profound meaning is in its three sides, which perfectly mirror the three philosophical principles. Each point corresponds to salt, sulfur, and mercury, the holy trinity of body, soul, and spirit. The triangle is the alchemical process in its simplest geometric form, showing that these three must be brought into a stable, interdependent relationship to create anything new. It is the diagram for the sacred marriage where two opposing points, king and queen, are united by a third, reconciling point, giving birth to the philosopher's stone. To give this spiritual triangle a foundation in reality, you need the square. With its four equal sides, the square is the emblem of the material world, the four classical elements, and the stability of earth. It represents solidity, manifestation, and the physical vessel that contains the volatile work. The square is the laboratory floor, the stable cube of salt, the four corners of the world. It is necessity, the realm of limits and form where the infinite possibilities of the circle must finally take shape. This brings us to the ultimate geometric quest, a puzzle that obsessed alchemists and mystics for centuries, the squaring of the circle. This was not merely a difficult mathematical exercise. It was the supreme symbolic goal of the entire great work. To square the circle means to take the infinite, eternal spirit, represented by the circle, and perfectly contain it within the finite, stable boundaries of the material world, the square. It is the act of manifesting heaven on earth. In practical terms, it meant creating the philosopher's stone, a tangible object that held the properties of the quintessence. In spiritual terms, it was the ultimate achievement of enlightenment, where the boundless divine spirit becomes fully embodied and operational in a human life. A person who has squared the circle is a rebis, a living paradox, an infinite consciousness perfectly at home within a finite form. Their spirit, once a soaring circle, now walks with steady, square stability in the world, transforming everything it touches. So when you see an alchemical manuscript with a diagram of a circle inside a square, or a complex geometric puzzle in the margins, you are not looking at a doodle. You are looking at the final exam, the visual equation for the impossible made real, the moment spirit willingly accepts the loving limits of form. Geometry gives way to a hidden code of numbers, a silent mathematics woven into every scene. Beyond the shapes, the alchemists embedded a sacred numerology, believing certain numbers held the very keys to creation's architecture. To read their drawings is to count along with them, to see the process quantified in a mystical arithmetic. The most sacred of these numbers is 3. It is the holy trinity of the work, echoing everywhere. You have the 3 philosophical principles: salt, sulfur, and mercury. You have the 3 stages of the work, often summarized as black, white, and red. You see it in triangles, in trios of animals, or in a king, queen, and their rubis child. 3 represents the dynamic minimum required for creation, the resolution of a pair of opposites by a third, reconciling force. It is the number of active transformation. But for that transformation to have a stable world in which to occur, you need 4. 4 provides the foundational structure. It is the square of the material world, the 4 classical elements of earth, air, fire, and water. It is the 4 stages of the full color sequence: negrido, albedo, citrinitas, and rubido. It is the 4 cardinal directions anchoring the work in the totality of space. Where 3 is the spark, 4 is the crucible that contains it. This pattern builds toward the great cycle of 7. In the ancient cosmos, there were 7 classical planets visible to the naked eye, and each ruled one of the 7 known metals. The alchemical journey was often framed as a planetary ascent, a spiritual pilgrimage through these 7 spheres. To perfect a metal was to master the influence of its corresponding planet. This is why you might see a ladder with 7 rungs ascending toward heaven, each rung marked with a planetary symbol. Climbing this ladder meant successfully integrating the qualities of each celestial sphere, from the leaden weight of Saturn to the solar brilliance of gold. It signified the completion of a cosmic circuit within the self. Finally, framing it all, you often find the number 12. In circular diagrams like the famed Azoth of the Philosophers, you will see the 12 signs of the zodiac arranged around the outer wheel. This links the intimate work in the flask to the grand, slow turning of the celestial year. The 12 gates of a celestial castle, a common allegory, represent the need to pass through each zodiacal influence, each month, or each specific test to reach the central treasure at the heart of time itself. So when you decode a drawing of a castle with 12 towers or a circular process with 12 steps, you are not just counting. You are reading a calendar for the soul, an instruction that the work must align with and integrate all phases of a complete cosmic cycle. The numbers are a map, a measurable rhythm for the immeasurable journey of becoming whole. The silent mathematics of the work finds its most spectacular expression in a single, breathtaking artifact. Unfurling across yards of parchment, the Ripley Scroll is not merely a book of symbols. It is a grand visual epic of the entire alchemical process. Named for the legendary English alchemist George Ripley, these scrolls, of which several versions exist, present a continuous, left-to-right narrative that you literally walk through with your eyes, a sequential roadmap for the great work. To read it is to follow a recipe where every ingredient is a creature and every instruction a mythical scene. Our journey begins with one of its most startling images, the hermaphroditic dragon. This is not the chaotic beast of earlier symbolism, but a refined, unified creature, often winged and crowned, with both male and female attributes. It represents the perfected prima materia, the first matter that has already been purified and contains within itself the balanced seeds of both king and queen, sulfur and mercury. It is the promising, yet still dormant, starting point where all potential lies coiled. From this unified dragon flows the next crucial stage, depicted as an elaborate multi-tiered fountain. This is the fountain of life, a structure from which streams of different colored waters, often red and white, flow into a central basin. This is the allegory for distillation and purification, the repeated washing and separating of the substances. The red and white streams are the royal couple's essences being divided and refined, cleansed of all impurity through cyclical circulation, just like the pelican feeding itself. The fountain itself is the apparatus, and the flowing waters are the patient, repetitive labor of the early stages, the solve et coagula in beautiful, liquid motion. Having been purified by the fountain, the king and queen are now ready for their sacred union. The scroll shows them seated together in a large, sealed bath or glass vessel, often labeled the bath of the philosophers. Here, they are not merely embracing, they are dissolving. Their distinct bodies melt away as their essences merge into a single, homogeneous solution. This is the chemical wedding in its most literal symbolic form, the moment of conjunction where opposites cease to conflict and become one new substance. In the laboratory, this corresponds to a specific chemical marriage of materials, but spiritually, it is the dissolution of the ego, the surrender of separate identity so a new, unified consciousness can form. Watching over this intimate dissolution is often the poignant image of the pelican, piercing its own breast to nourish its young. At this point in the narrative, the pelican symbolizes the self-sacrificial nature of the work. The old self must give of its own substance repeatedly to feed the growth of the new. The distillation process shown by the fountain is now turned inward as the alchemist's own energies are circulated and offered back to the central process happening in the bath. It is a reminder that no transformation occurs without a cost, a voluntary offering from the heart of the practitioner. From the sealed bath of union after a period of gentle, incubated heat, something miraculous occurs. The scroll's narrative culminates in the emergence of an infant, often shown as a naked child or a young king rising from the vessel, sometimes holding a tiny flag or scepter. This is the infant philosopher king, the newborn philosopher's stone. It is the rebis in its initial, delicate form, the divine child born from the mystical marriage. This infant represents the first tangible manifestation of the perfected substance, fresh, potent, and full of glorious potential. It is the culmination of the sequence, proof that the long and arduous recipe has borne fruit. The Ripley Scroll, therefore, is far more than a strange medieval comic strip. It is a precise, albeit coded, instructional manual. Each vivid scene corresponds directly to a specific laboratory operation, a required piece of apparatus, or a chemical process. But simultaneously, each scene maps onto an internal, spiritual ordeal. The dragon is confronting your own dual nature. The fountain is the purifying work of self-reflection. The bath is the surrender of will. The pelican is the discipline of constant self-offering, and the infant king is the dawn of a new, authentic self born from that total process. To follow the scroll from left to right is to follow the recipe not just for making a stone, but for remaking a soul. If the Ripley Scroll is the grand sequential recipe, the Splendor Solis is its breathtaking stained glass window. Created in Germany in the 16th century, this manuscript is less a step-by-step manual and more a series of visionary paintings, each a self-contained universe of symbolism housed within the elegant form of an alchemical flask. 22 magnificent illustrations, awash in deep blues, crimsons, and emeralds, and lavishly illuminated with real gold leaf, present the stages of the work not as a process, but as a gallery of sublime states of being. The gold itself is not mere decoration, it is the message. It is the visual embodiment of the solar goal, the light of the perfected stone shining from within the page, a constant reminder that every dark stage is undertaken in pursuit of this ultimate radiance. To turn its pages is to walk through a temple where science, spirituality, and art become one. The flasks do not show laboratory equipment but entire mythic landscapes. In one, you see a king and queen enthroned under a golden sun and silver moon. In another, a green lion stands guard, but two scenes capture the essence of the journey with particular power. The first is a flask dominated by a chilling image, a black sun hanging in a dark sky, its light extinguished. Below it lies a skeleton, bones bleached white, resting on barren ground. This is Nigredo, the blackening, depicted not as a mere step but as a cosmic event. The black sun represents the eclipse of the conscious self, the moment when the light of ordinary understanding fails completely. The skeleton is the death of the old identity, the reduction to the bare, essential structure. There is no violence here, only a profound and necessary stillness. It is the winter of the soul, the required dissolution where everything that is not essential is stripped away, leaving only the pure architecture of being from which new life will be built. From that absolute darkness emerges its luminous opposite. Another flask shows a queen robed in pristine white, seated serenely upon a silver crescent moon that floats over a calm sea. This is Albedo, the whitening, in its most iconic form. The queen is the purified soul, sovereign in her newfound clarity. The crescent moon is the reflective, intuitive mind, no longer dark but brilliantly illuminated. The tranquil waters beneath her represent emotions that have been stilled and purified, no longer turbulent but mirror calm. She holds a white flower, often a lily, the symbol of this achieved purity. The entire scene breathes an atmosphere of peaceful, lunar illumination, the dawn that follows the long, starless night of the black sun. It is the state of washing clean, where the debris of the old self has been cleared away, and what remains is a receptive, brilliant clarity, ready to receive the golden light of the sun. What makes the Splendor Solis so uniquely powerful is its fearless blending of sacred traditions. Christian symbolism is woven seamlessly into this Hermetic tapestry. In several flasks, you will find clear allusions to the resurrection, with figures rising from tombs or sarcophagi bathed in golden light. This is no accident. For the alchemist, the resurrection of Christ was the ultimate divine allegory for their own work, the triumph of spirit over matter, of life over death. The process in their flask was a personal participation in that same cosmic mystery. Pagan and planetary symbolism sits comfortably beside these Christian motifs. The gods of the ancient world become personifications of universal forces, Venus representing love and copper, Saturn the necessary leaden weight of discipline and time. This is not a conflict of beliefs, but a grand synthesis. The manuscript declares that the truth of transformation is a universal truth, appearing in different garments across all times and traditions. The alchemist's path was seen as a rediscovery of this perennial wisdom, a way to personally enact the same divine drama of death and rebirth that myths and scriptures only described. The Splendor Solis, therefore, is more than a beautiful book. It is a meditative device. You do not just read it, you contemplate it. Each lavish flask is a window into a stage of your own potential, a visual anchor for an inner state. The black sun asks you to acknowledge your own necessary periods of dissolution. The queen on the moon invites you to cultivate inner stillness and clarity. And the radiant gold leaf that gilds every page whispers the promise that woven through every moment of darkness is the inextinguishable thread of the sun, waiting to be uncovered. Yet another manuscript pushes this silent language to its absolute limit. The Mutus Liber, the wordless book, published in France in the late 17th century, offers not a single written word of explanation. Its 15 enigmatic plates unfold a story told entirely through images, a purely visual scripture for the dedicated seeker. The sequence is deceptively simple, following a man and a woman as they perform a precise series of rituals. We see them gathering dew at dawn, tending to strange vessels, and praying fervently under the watchful gaze of the sun, moon, and stars. They work with plants and flasks, not with metals, pointing to a specific branch of the art known as spagyrics, the alchemy of the vegetable kingdom. Here, the goal is not metallic gold, but the quintessence of life itself, extracted from herbs and flowers to create the ultimate elixir of health and vitality. The Mutus Liber is on one level a meticulous step-by-step pictorial guide for this very process. You can trace the recipe from plate to plate, the collection of morning dew, a substance considered the purest celestial water condensed on earth, its careful distillation, its combination with plant matter in sealed vessels, and the cyclical heating and cooling guided by the heavens. It is a silent laboratory manual of astonishing precision, but to see only a chemical recipe is to miss the deeper, resonant allegory. The constant presence of the man and woman working in unison is its first great symbol. This is not the solitary sage in his lonely tower. This is spiritual partnership, the sacred collaboration between the active and receptive principles within a single practitioner, or perhaps between two dedicated souls. Their synchronized labor shows that the great work requires the balance of all human faculties, the masculine and feminine energies cooperating as one. Their postures of prayer in nearly every plate reveal the second layer. This is as much a mystical rite as a technical procedure. The work is performed in a state of devotion, an offering to the divine forces symbolized by the celestial bodies overhead. The alchemist's apparatus becomes a tool for prayer, and prayer becomes a tool for transformation. The entire process is framed as a dialogue with nature and the cosmos, where human intention, aligned with natural law and divine will, can coax forth miracles. Finally, the relentless focus on cycles, dew, day and night, the phases of the moon, tells us the third secret. Success depends on harmonizing with natural rhythms. You cannot collect the sun's essence at midnight. The spiritual work, too, has its seasons, its times for active effort and patient waiting, for gathering inspiration and for silent incubation. The Mutus Liber, in its profound silence, speaks volumes. It says the formula is not in a book but in the sky and the morning grass. It says the work is not done by hands alone but by a heart in prayerful alignment. And it says the final ingredient for any elixir is not a herb, but the disciplined, reverent attention of the human spirit working in partnership with the turning world. The silent instructions of the Mutus Liber point toward an inner laboratory, a truth that would reshape our understanding of these symbols entirely. In the early 20th century, a Swiss psychiatrist named Carl Jung made a startling discovery that bridged the medieval workshop to the modern mind. He proposed that alchemy was not really about chemistry at all, but about psychology. For Jung, the fantastical beasts, the royal marriages, and the sequence of colors were not coded chemical formulas, but projections of the unconscious mind. The alchemists, without knowing it, were mapping the universal process of human psychological growth, a journey he called individuation. The laboratory was the psyche, the substances were parts of the self, and the philosopher's stone was the achievement of a whole, integrated personality. This was a revolutionary lens, turning ancient obscurity into a timeless guide for anyone seeking to understand themselves. Jung saw in the stages of the work a perfect mirror for the stages of confronting the unconscious. The first and most daunting stage, the nigredo or blackening, resonated deeply with what he called shadow work. That image of the black sun, the rotting corpse, or the crow pecking at a skull was not about chemical putrefaction, but about a necessary psychological descent. It represents the moment we are forced to confront our own shadow, the repressed, dark, or unacceptable parts of ourselves we try to ignore. Psychologically, this is the experience of depression, a profound crisis, or a crushing sense of meaninglessness where our comfortable persona crumbles. Just as the alchemist had to reduce his prima materia to a black, chaotic mass, we must face the chaotic, uncomfortable truths within. This isn't failure, it's the essential first step. You cannot integrate what you refuse to see. The blackening is the courageous, painful act of bringing the shadow into the light of awareness, allowing the old, false self to die so something authentic can begin to form. From that fertile darkness emerges clarity. The albedo, or whitening, is what follows the shadow work. Once the murky contents of the unconscious have been acknowledged, they can be purified and understood. The white queen on her crescent moon, the radiant swan, the clear pool, all symbolize this stage of illumination and expanded consciousness. Jung associated this with the emergence of the anima or animus, the inner feminine or masculine counterpart that connects the conscious ego to the deeper unconscious. It is a state of refined intuition and self-reflection, where the emotional turmoil of the Negrido settles into a serene, moonlit understanding. You gain insight into your own patterns, your motivations, and your deeper nature. The mind becomes like that still pool, able to reflect the contents of the soul without distortion. This is not the end goal, but a beautiful and necessary plateau of clarity, where you see yourself and the world with new, washed, clean eyes. That clarity must then be brought to life. The final rubedo, the reddening, is the culmination of Jung's individuation process. It is the sacred marriage made permanent within the psyche. The red king and white queen united as the rubis, the phoenix rising in crimson glory. These symbols represent the achievement of the self with a capital S. This is not the everyday ego, but the central archetypal core of one's total personality, where conscious and unconscious are finally reconciled. Psychologically, rubedo is the state of wholeness and integration. The passions of the red sulfur are now guided by the clarity of the white mercury, all grounded in the stable salt of a healthy ego. You are no longer at war with parts of yourself. Your contradictions are held in a dynamic, creative tension. You operate from a place of authenticity where your actions align with your deepest values. This is the modern philosopher's stone, the gold of a fully lived and self-aware life. Through Jung's eyes, every alchemical drawing transforms from a cryptic recipe into a vibrant map of psychic transformation. The dragon you must slay is your own unchecked anger or fear. The green lion devouring the sun is a destructive habit consuming your vitality. The chemical wedding is the inner work of reconciling your logical mind with your intuitive heart. This interpretation does not invalidate the historical practice, it unveils its deeper, perennial wisdom. The alchemists were indeed working on matter, but in doing so, they were also inevitably working on themselves. Their symbols became a universal language for the human condition, describing a path of death and rebirth that is as relevant today as it was 500 years ago. Their art offers a powerful mirror, asking us not to turn lead into gold, but to turn fragmentation into wholeness, to undertake the greatest work, the work on the self. That inner work of psychological transformation was mirrored by a very real outward discipline. To dismiss alchemy as mere superstition is to miss the quiet birth of science happening within its cryptic symbols. These were not dreamers staring idly at clouds. They were the first true experimentalists, men and women who spent lifetimes in smoky laboratories, meticulously observing the behavior of matter. Every bizarre image in their manuscripts often encoded a hard-won, empirical discovery about how the physical world actually works. That serpent of mercury coiling through the apparatus is a perfect example. It is not just a symbol for the spirit, it is a direct illustration of the process of distillation. The serpent's winding body maps the path of vapors rising through the coiled tube of an alembic, cooling and condensing back into liquid, a technique alchemists perfected and which remains fundamental to chemistry today. The terrifying green lion devouring the sun is another. This vividly captures the power of strong acids like aqua regia to dissolve even noble metals like gold, the solar metal. The lion's corrosive action was a poetic but precise description of a powerful chemical reaction they had mastered. Their drawings were, in part, a meticulous visual record of their laboratory results, a way to pass on technical knowledge that words alone could not fully capture. Perhaps no figure shatters the myth of alchemy as primitive nonsense more completely than Isaac Newton. We remember him for defining the laws of gravity and motion, the very architect of classical physics. Yet history often forgets that Newton spent more time on alchemical research than on all his physics and mathematics combined. For him, there was no contradiction. Alchemy was the key to unlocking the active principles behind God's creation, a way to understand the hidden forces that caused growth, transformation, and attraction in the natural world. He filled thousands of pages with copied alchemical texts and his own laboratory notes, seeking the secrets of the philosopher's stone not for wealth but for divine wisdom. He saw in the laboratory a microcosm where he could witness and test the very handiwork of the divine. Newton's story forces us to expand our definition of science. His groundbreaking work in optics and gravity did not happen in a vacuum, isolated from his alchemical pursuits. They were all part of a single, lifelong quest to decipher the unified code of the universe. The disciplined observation, the careful measurement, the relentless questioning of nature, these hallmarks of the scientific method were being forged in the fires of the alchemical furnace long before they were given their modern names. So the next time you encounter one of these strange old drawings, see it with a double vision. See the spiritual allegory, the map for inner wholeness that Carl Jung revealed. But also see the empirical notebook of a pioneering scientist. The dissolving king is a lesson in surrender and a diagram of a solubility experiment. The ascending eagle is the flight of the spirit and a technical sketch of sublimation. This dual nature is the true genius of the art. Alchemy refused to separate the observer from the observed, the soul from the substance. In their quest, the transformation of matter and the transformation of the self were a single, sacred process. Their legacy is not a pile of failed attempts to make gold, but a foundational chapter in humanity's long conversation with reality. A reminder that every scientific fact was once a mystical insight, and every inner truth can be sought in the outer world. But every path to enlightenment has its precipices. For all its beauty, the alchemical quest was fraught with genuine peril, and the artists did not shy away from painting the dangers in stark, unforgettable symbols. A grinning skull or a reclining skeleton was not merely a memento mori, a reminder of death. In the context of the laboratory, it was a specific, vital warning. The process of heating metals and minerals could release invisible, toxic fumes, vapors of mercury or arsenic that could slowly poison the unwary practitioner. That skeletal figure lying beside a flask was a direct caution label, a silent scream to ensure proper ventilation, to respect the deadly spirits they were attempting to tame. It was a symbol that the work could kill you as surely as any sword if approached with ignorance or arrogance. An even more dramatic warning was the exploding vessel. Illustrations of glassware shattering under pressure with shards flying like daggers were diagrams of very real laboratory accidents. Certain reactions, especially those involving volatile spirits or sealed containers heated too quickly, could lead to violent explosions. This symbol served as a crucial lesson in patience and precision, teaching that forcing the process, applying too much fiery will too rapidly, would not hasten the stone but destroy the work and likely the worker. It was a physical metaphor for a spiritual truth that genuine transformation cannot be rushed or forced without catastrophic results. Beyond these physical hazards lay a more insidious trap, the lure of the false path. This is often depicted through the figure of the fool, a man in jester's garb or simple peasant clothes, blindly chasing after literal coins or nuggets of gold lying on the ground. While the true philosopher king gazes at the celestial sun, the fool is fixated on its metallic shadow. This motif is a scathing critique of greed and literalism, the reduction of a profound spiritual art to a get-rich-quick scheme. It warns that anyone who enters the work solely for material wealth has already failed, mistaking the symbol for the substance, the map for the territory. They are chasing fool's gold, and in doing so, they become the fool themselves, forever circling the base of the mountain while the true path ascends invisibly beside them. And then there is the green lion, that vivid beast devouring the sun. We've seen it as a symbol of the corrosive prima materia, but in the hands of an unprepared experimenter, it was a very real agent of chaos and harm. The substances it represented, powerful mineral acids, could maim in an instant, eating through flesh and metal alike. To invoke the green lion without the proper knowledge and respect was to unleash a force that could consume not just the solar gold, but the laboratory, the health, and the sanity of the alchemist. It stood as the ultimate emblem of the raw, untamed power of nature, which must be approached with humility and skill, never with brute force. These symbols of danger and deception transform our understanding of the art. They reveal alchemy not as a safe academic pastime, but as a dangerous pursuit of truth, a tightrope walk over an abyss of both physical and spiritual ruin. Every skull whispered a choice: proceed with reverence and caution, or join the bones on the floor. Every exploding vessel asked if the seeker had the patience to contain the volatile forces within themselves. And every image of a fool chasing coins questioned the viewer's own motives. Are you here for the gold or for the transformation that the gold represents? The path to the Philosopher's Stone was paved with these grim signposts, each one a test of the aspirant's purity of heart and strength of spirit. These grim warnings were not meant for the eyes of the crowd. The transmission of this dangerous, sacred knowledge was a matter of profound secrecy, passed from master to apprentice in whispers and guarded symbols. For centuries, the primary vessels for this wisdom were not public lectures, but exquisitely hand-copied manuscripts, often hidden within the scriptoriums of monasteries or the private libraries of noble patrons. Here, in the quiet glow of candlelight, scribes and illuminators worked as gatekeepers, meticulously painting each symbolic scene. This was a slow, expensive, and controlled process, ensuring that the knowledge remained within a closed circle of the initiated. The monastic orders, with their tradition of preserving ancient texts and their focus on spiritual development, became natural custodians for the inner, mystical dimensions of the art. Later, craft guilds, particularly those of metalworkers, goldsmiths, and apothecaries, became another vital channel. Their practical, hands-on knowledge of materials and transformations formed the outer shell of the work, and within their lodges, the symbolic drawings served as both technical diagrams and moral instruction for the journeyman. This system of closed, oral, and visual transmission created a living chain, where understanding was earned through dedication and personal guidance, not simply read in a book. Each manuscript was a unique artifact, a personal dialogue between a master's knowledge and a scribe's hand, ensuring the symbols remained alive and resonant, their deepest meanings protected by layers of craft tradition and sworn oaths of secrecy. This hidden river of knowledge broke into a flood with the invention of the printing press in the 15th century. Suddenly, alchemical ideas and their stunning imagery could be reproduced not dozens of times but hundreds. Printed books like the Splendor Solis or the works of Paracelsus circulated across Europe, spreading the symbolic language to a vastly wider audience. This was a double-edged sword. On one hand, it democratized access, allowing any literate person with curiosity and coin to purchase a book of secrets. It fueled the Renaissance fascination with hidden knowledge and spurred new waves of experimentation. The printing press also helped standardize the symbolic vocabulary. As certain emblem books became popular, their specific way of depicting the green lion or the chemical wedding became a common reference point, creating a more consistent visual lexicon across different countries and languages. Yet, crucially, the core secrecy remained intact. The printed symbols were now available to all, but their true interpretation was not. The text accompanying these images was often deliberately obscure, filled with paradoxes, false leads, and allegorical stories. The pictures themselves became the perfect filter. To the casual reader, they were fascinating curiosities or literal recipes that would inevitably fail. To the prepared mind, the one who had been given a key or who had undergone the inner preparation, they were luminous roadmaps. The printing press did not break the secret. It simply changed the lock, allowing the society of seekers to recognize one another through a shared, public, yet utterly cryptic language. This new era of public secrecy gave rise to the most famous vessels for this knowledge, the great secret societies. The Rosicrucian manifestos of the early 17th century, claiming to be from a hidden brotherhood of enlightened adepts, swept through Europe like a cultural storm. They spoke of a universal reformation of both science and spirituality, and their documents were saturated with alchemical symbolism. The rose and cross itself is a profound emblem, the rose blooming at the center of the cross where the four elements meet, symbolizing the divine revelation flowering from the suffering and reconciliation of opposites. Rosicrucianism, whether as a historical society or a powerful cultural idea, presented alchemy as a path of Christian mysticism and philanthropic service, its symbols encoding a call for an inner and outer transformation of the world. Similarly, Freemasonry, emerging from the traditions of stonemason guilds, adopted and adapted alchemical symbolism into its elaborate degree system. The rough ashlar being shaped into the perfect cube is a direct echo of the squaring of the circle, the transformation of the base human into a perfected spiritual being. The compass and square are tools of geometry, but also symbols of spirit and matter, the celestial and the earthly, brought into harmonious measure. For these societies, the symbols were no longer about laboratory chemicals, but about moral architecture, the building of a virtuous self and a just society. They became a living language of initiation, where each degree unveiled another layer of meaning in the old emblems, transforming the king and queen into representations of the initiate's own balanced faculties, and the philosopher's stone into the goal of a fully realized ethical life. So the journey of these symbols, from a monk's parchment to a mason's tracing board, tells a story of adaptation and enduring power. They survived not by staying locked away, but by learning to speak in new dialects. In the monastery, they spoke the language of personal salvation. In the guild lodge, they spoke of craft mastery and moral integrity. In the printed book, they spoke to the public yet remained silent to the profane. And in the secret society, they became the language of fraternity, moral instruction, and progressive enlightenment. Each channel of transmission added a layer of meaning without erasing the old, allowing the symbols to accumulate depth like strata of wisdom. The dragon was always the chaotic prima materia, but it could also be the ungoverned passions of the apprentice mason that must be tamed. The chemical wedding was always the union of opposites, but it could also represent the harmony sought within a lodge or within the human heart. This is the genius of the symbolic language. It is not a closed code with a single answer, but a living, multi-layered mirror that reflects the questions of the age. The societies did not merely preserve old drawings, they kept the transformative fire within them alive, teaching that the true laboratory was the human community, and the greatest work was the forging of wisdom from the raw material of human experience. The master of symbols was often also a master of the brush and berin. In the world of alchemy, the artist and the practitioner were frequently the same person, their hands skilled in both manipulating matter and capturing its essence on vellum. This union created a unique category of Western art, where aesthetic beauty was not a decoration for ideas, but the very vehicle for their transmission. A stunning example is the work of Heinrich Kunrath, a late 16th century physician and alchemist. His masterpiece, The Amphitheater of Eternal Wisdom, is not merely an illustration, it is a spiritual and intellectual arena engraved in copper. The image is an architectural marvel, a circular temple open to the heavens where the solitary alchemist philosopher kneels in prayer at an altar, surrounded by a breathtaking encyclopedia of symbols. On one side, his well-equipped laboratory hums with activity. On the other, his oratory stands ready for meditation. Above him, the divine name shines in a Hebrew tetragrammaton, while around the walls parade the 7 planetary angels, the muses, and the virtues. This single, densely packed engraving visually argues Conrad's core belief that the alchemical work demanded a harmony of hands, head, and heart, of laboratory practice, philosophical study, and devout prayer. It is a manifesto in image form, declaring that true wisdom is found in the amphitheater where science and spirit perform together. The artistic techniques themselves were chosen for their symbolic potency. Engraving, with its precise, incised lines, allowed for incredible detail and mass reproduction, letting complex ideas spread widely yet remain exact. The use of layered allegorical composition, where every figure, object, and architectural element carries multiple meanings, encouraged deep, meditative viewing. You could not glance at these works, you had to dwell in them, letting your eye travel from the microcosm of the flask to the macrocosm of the zodiac encircling the scene. The lavish application of gold leaf in manuscripts like the Splendor Solis was not mere extravagance. It was a direct visual invocation of the solar goal, making the page itself a piece of illuminated philosophy. The color symbolism was meticulously applied, the blacks of putrefaction, the whites of purity, the reds of completion, each hue a precise coordinate on the map of transformation. These artist alchemists were not illustrating a theory from a distance. They were documenting a lived experience, an ordeal of fire and faith they themselves were undergoing. Their art was a record of their own spiritual and experimental journey, making each manuscript a deeply personal confession, yet one cloaked in universal symbols. This is why we must view these drawings as masterpieces of Western esoteric art. They stand at a crossroads where the technical skill of Northern Renaissance engraving meets the mystical vision of a seeker. They achieve something rare, the seamless fusion of operational truth, philosophical depth, and sublime beauty. The composition pleases the eye, the symbolism challenges the intellect, and the underlying narrative of transformation speaks directly to the soul. In these works, a diagram of a distillation apparatus is as elegantly rendered as a biblical scene, and a mythical beast is painted with the same observational care as a medicinal herb. This refusal to separate categories that we moderns see as distinct, art from science, religion from experiment, is their most powerful message. The beauty of the image was part of its truth, a harmony and perfection that mirrored the harmonious, perfected state the alchemists sought to achieve within the flask and within themselves. To create a beautiful drawing of the Philosopher's Stone was, in a very real sense, to take one step closer to manifesting it. That same symbolic language, forged in secret laboratories, now walks openly among us in plain sight. You encounter it in the stories you love and the logos you see every day, often without realizing you are looking at a 500-year-old code. The most famous modern reference is, of course, the Philosopher's Stone, the central object of desire in the first Harry Potter book and film. While J.K. Rowling's stone grants immortality and produces the elixir of life, its roots are planted firmly in the alchemical tradition, where it represented the ultimate achievement of perfection. The story itself is structured around a young wizard's coming of age, a personal transformation that mirrors the inner work the stone has always symbolized. Over in the world of anime, the iconic Ouroboros, the serpent eating its own tail, is the namesake and central symbol of the villains in Fullmetal Alchemist. The show's entire plot revolves around the law of equivalent exchange and the taboo of human transmutation, core alchemical concepts about balance and the sacred nature of creation. The brothers' quest to restore their bodies is a literal and painful enactment of the great work, making the ancient symbol a perfect, menacing emblem for their world's broken laws. Video games are rich with this heritage. In The Witcher, signs like Quen and Yrden are drawn from alchemical and astrological symbols, and the crafting of potions and oils is a direct nod to the spagyric arts of herbal alchemy. The Assassin's Creed series, obsessed with hidden knowledge and ancient conspiracies, frequently layers its narratives with alchemical imagery, suggesting the Assassins and Templars are battling over the same perennial secrets the Old Masters sought. This visual vocabulary has seeped into the very architecture of commerce. Look closely at the logo of a major global oil company, and you will see a stylized Ouroboros. The serpent eating its tail, once a symbol of cosmic unity and eternal cycles, now frames the name of a corporation, its meaning subtly shifting to suggest endless momentum, self-sufficiency, and the cyclical nature of the fossil fuel industry itself. The symbol retains its power and recognizability, even as its context is completely reinvented. This is where the journey of these symbols becomes truly fascinating. They have been liberated from their original, secretive contexts but have not lost their magnetic pull. In the realm of personal expression, alchemical iconography is a mainstay of tattoo art. People permanently ink the Ouroboros on their skin to symbolize self-reflection or a cycle they have overcome. The caduceus, often confused with the rod of Asclepius, is chosen for its associations with healing and balance. Intricate geometric designs based on the squaring of the circle or the sevenfold ladder adorn bodies as maps of personal journeys toward wholeness. The symbols are chosen not for their chemical recipes but for their archetypal resonance, for their ability to tell a story of struggle, death, and rebirth on a living canvas. What does this widespread adoption mean? It proves that these images tap into something universal within the human psyche. We may no longer believe in turning lead into gold in a laboratory, but we absolutely understand the desire for personal transformation, for healing, for finding the formula that turns the base metal of our struggles into the gold of wisdom. The symbols work because they are not literal instructions, they are emotional and spiritual shorthand. A movie viewer does not need to understand the intricacies of the magnum opus to feel the gravity of the Philosopher's Stone. A person with an alchemical tattoo may not know the 12 steps of the Ripley Scroll, but they feel the truth of dissolution and rebirth in their own life. The original, dense layers of meaning, chemical, spiritual, and cosmological, have been distilled in the cauldron of popular culture. What remains is the potent essence, the core idea of change. The symbols endure because they are beautiful, mysterious, and true on a mythic level. They remind us that the stories we tell about magic elixirs and personal quests are ancient, and that the desire to decode the universe and remake ourselves is a fire that has burned in the human heart for centuries, its flames fanned by artists, storytellers, and seekers who found a language for the ineffable in the drawings of a forgotten art. We have walked through a gallery of kings and lions, of black suns and golden trees. We have seen the four elements dance, watched the green lion devour the sun, and witnessed the sacred marriage in a sealed glass. Each symbol, from the Ouroboros to the reddening phoenix, is a single word in a vast visual language, a language with one central subject: transformation. This is the ultimate revelation hidden in plain sight within the alchemical manuscript. It is not a language about things, but about processes, the eternal metamorphosis that governs the cosmos, the laboratory, and the human soul. The elements teach us about the states of our own being. The battling beasts map our internal conflicts. The sequence of colors charts a psychological journey from fragmentation to wholeness. Every strange drawing is a multifaceted mirror, reflecting a quest that is at once scientific, spiritual, and deeply personal. The true takeaway from this centuries-old cipher is not a recipe for gold, but a recognition of a timeless human impulse. These artists and seekers were attempting the most audacious project imaginable: to decode the unified principles behind nature, the divine, and the self. They believed the same laws that shaped stars and grew trees also govern the growth of the human spirit. In their quest to perfect matter, they inadvertently created the most detailed map we have for the perfection of the self. Their symbols endure because they speak to a journey we all undertake, whether we call it individuation, self-actualization, or simply personal growth. Each of us faces our own Negrido, our own dark nights where old certainties dissolve. We all strive for moments of albedo, of serene clarity. We work to awaken our inner citronitas, our golden purpose, and hope to someday achieve a rubido, a state of passionate, integrated being where our contradictions are held in creative harmony. In this light, the great work is not an archaic ritual, it is the ongoing work of a lifetime. The next time you encounter one of these ancient images in a museum, a book, or even a film, you can look with new eyes. You will see more than odd fantasy. You will see a profound and hopeful map. You will recognize the universal story of struggle, death, and rebirth encoded in a dragon's scales, a queen's gown, or a radiant stone. So tell me, which of these symbols spoke to you most deeply? Was it the eternal Ouroboros, the struggling lion and eagle, or the triumphant phoenix? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this journey into the hidden language of history, subscribe for more explorations into the world's greatest mysteries. The quest for understanding never truly ends, it simply changes form, and the next chapter is always waiting to be decoded.